Greetings, friends. Welcome to another installment of Into the Necrosphere. On this episode of the show, I am going to be talking to the legendary Sotiris Anunnaki of Septic Flesh, my second Greek legend inside of a month. And he and I spoke about everything from the early days of the band up to and including the release of their forthcoming record, Modern Primitive, which drops on Nuclear Blast on May the 20th. He gave me a bit of insight into what it takes to put together the average Septic Flesh record, which is mind-blowing, quite frankly. And we also spoke a bit about some of the lyrical themes on the new record, which unsurprisingly chimes quite closely with some of what I've spoken about on this podcast for the past 2 and a bit years. But great guy, super fun conversation. You guys are really going to enjoy this. And then speaking of having my mind blown, straight after the Sotiris conversation, I'm going to be talking to you about the new Ultha record, which dropped as a bit of a surprise on April 1st. But I'm going to tell you all of the reasons why I have not really been able to listen to anything else since that came out. And then, of course, straight after that, I'll be doing my usual news, rants, and react segment, which more and more of you seem to love. I love doing it, so I'm happy to share that enjoyment with the rest of you. A few reminders before we get the main event underway. If you're new to the podcast, help me hijack the algorithm by leaving a like, giving me a 5-star review on your podcasting platform of choice, and of course, subscribe if you haven't done so already. Also, if you want to really show your love for the show, head over to the Into the Necrosphere Teespring store and buy yourself a t-shirt or a jogger or a hoodie or whatever catches your fancy. And then finally, when you're done with Into the Necrosphere episode 123 and you're staggering around thinking, what do I listen to next? Then head over to my brother podcasts, the Horrible 666 podcast, Everything Went Black, Necromaniacs, as well as Iblis Manifestations. Really a great community that we're starting to build around these shows, and I love all of the ones that I just mentioned now. And I think we seem to attract a very similar sort of audience as well. Obviously, I've had most of the people from those podcasts on the show, and we'll have some of the folks that I haven't had on yet on here as well at some point down the line. Speaking of which, I am going to do 2 episodes this week. I have been fortunate enough to build up a bit of a backlog of interviews that have been done, so I decided to spread the love a little earlier than I normally would. I'm going to be dropping the Kylie Calling episode that I've mentioned to you is in the can this coming Friday. And then next week, Tuesday, I'll have Alex Jones, not the Alex Jones of InfoWars and far-right conspiracy theory fame, but the Alex Jones of Undeath. And he and I are talking about their new record. We're talking about Chris Barnes and his mean remarks, and we're doing all sorts of other fun stuff. So that's going to be coming your way next Tuesday. But for now, I'm going to zip my lip. I'm going to get this show on the road, and I'm going to welcome to the podcast, for the first time ever, Sotiris Anunnaki of Septic Flesh. Well, Sotiris, welcome to Into the Necrosphere. It kind of feels to me, I just mentioned to you offline, I first discovered you on Death is Just the Beginning, Volume 3. There was I think Return to Carthage was on site, I think track 16 of the compilation. And I remember hearing it and thinking, this is some of the most brutal stuff I've ever heard in my entire life. The drums were crazy and the vocals were really deep. Kind of feels like it's been a long time in the making, this conversation. I'm really happy to have you on the podcast. How have you been doing, man?
I'm doing well. I'm glad to be here with you. I'm amazed that you are so long time listener to Septic Flesh. And actually, this compilation was from Nuclear Blast, I think.
Yeah, it was. Well, I was going to say there's an irony in that, because you guys are signed to Nuclear Blast now. I discovered you through Nuclear Blast because you were around those times. That was Holy Records, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. No, I as I said, I remember that very well. The one thing I remember I'll never forget about Return to Carthage is how crazy I thought, because I didn't realize at the time that it was a drum machine. How crazy it was, towards the end of the song, it's fast, and then it gets even faster. It's but that always blew me away. I was like, how can the drummer do this? Because you guys were pretty far ahead of your time as far as drum machines were concerned, and that, because Mortician were using a drum machine, but you knew it was a drum machine. But with you guys, it was sort of always are they, aren't they? You could never quite tell.
We had some drummers, and there were some recordings, but of course, most of it was drum machine.
Yeah.
And at the time, there was a problem to find the drummer that we wanted. And there were too few drummers on the extreme side of metal, and too many guitarists.
Yeah, I was about to say.
So
all the drummers Sakis had already taken for Rotting Christ in Greece.
yes. There were some drummers that were playing to 5-6 bands.
Yeah,
and we also had a live drummer that had also other bands to play. So we had to find solutions. Fortunately, later in our history, we found great drummers that can actually play faster than decapitated.
Yeah, well, I mean, that is definitely the case, and I think we'll talk about that in a second. But I wanted to ask you about your, I guess, just the mood in the Septic Flesh camp right now, given you've got the new record coming out. We've hopefully got the worst of the pandemic and the lockdowns and all of that sort of stuff behind us. How is everybody feeling in the band right now?
We're really optimistic. We feel a kind of relief, you could say, because the whole experience of creating this specific album was really tense. A lot of problems happened during the whole process. A lot of time was spent finding solutions, because actually we're not an easy band, as we have so many different elements to record. And we use 3 different studios for the recordings. We had the recordings in Greece, the recordings that revolved around the metal instruments, guitars, bass, and vocals and stuff like that. We had the recordings in Prague for the orchestra, and we had the recordings in Sweden that was more appropriate for the drums, as Jens wanted to have control about the sound, And so we had to figure out how to record in 3 different places at in parallel, while there were so many restrictions about flights, about moving around, about everything. And imagine how to pack 100 people of the orchestra during COVID.
So I would imagine they all sat there with their masks on and they're busy playing.
Of course, they wear the mask, yes, but of course, when you have a choir, they can sing with mask. We have to find to wait for better days, and when the COVID situation was not so high, to make some recordings. So it was a long process. And during all this process, we were listening to the songs and we were refining the details. And we had, of course, the chance to make changes and try different options. But all this was really frustrating, because everything was, postponed and going backwards. So when we actually finished the recordings, we felt this kind of relief that, okay, we did it. We passed through all this hell, but this is the result. We are proud about the result. And, this is the feeling that we have right now.
It's a feeling of relief. You kind of almost sort of exhaling at the end of the experience. And I think a lot of people don't necessarily realize or appreciate how complicated it is to record a Septic Flesh record. When you consider just how many musicians, if you take them by kind of, I guess, individual numbers, how many musicians are actually involved in the average Septic Flesh record, especially over maybe the last 3 or 4. Just by number, to give people scale that aren't familiar with the band, but although frankly they all should be. But by number, how many musicians were part of Modern Primitive?
Over 100 musicians. Over. I don't know a specific number, because actually, besides the band, we have a full orchestra. We have a choir with a female choir, a male choir, a children choir, and also we have ethnic instruments.
Mm.
You can imagine that there are a whole lot of people involved, and actually you can say that for the people that are not so familiar with Septic Flesh, it's like creating a soundtrack.
Yeah.
So demanding. It's like we are behind a movie production, but this movie is played inside your mind.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because both the singles I've heard so far of Modern Primitive, I think it's the closest that it's come to sounding like a soundtrack to me that any of your stuff has come. I felt like Codex Omega was starting to touch on that quite a bit. This one really kind of steps that up, pretty substantially. And I love, for example, the visuals that accompanied this first single you released. There seems to be a really, coherent and connected visual element to the music, off of this record. But I wanted to ask you, when it comes to playing with orchestras, choirs, and things like that, have you just gone back in this case to the orchestra that you used previously, or do you go out and actually source new musicians, new orchestras, new choirs, depending on what your budget is, for example?
We are not putting water to our wine, considering budget. We could certainly find solutions that cost less, but our music is very demanding, and we don't want to compromise. For the orchestra, we have a long collaboration with the Philharmonic Orchestra of Prague, and we continue this collaboration because we feel a true connection, and they deliver exactly what we want, and they understand after all this those collaboration, those times of collaboration, what we want. Now about choirs, we use different choirs from time to time, depending of the options that we have at the time. And of course, the ethnic instruments is something that varies. Not many people know specific instruments, so we have to depend on people that are really into their craft, and provide this Mediterranean, we'll say, kind of feeling to the songs. So
I'm curious to know, because I've, my mom was a music teacher, and she was in a choir, and then she conducted a choir. So I've been kind of around the periphery of people like that. I know that Septic Flesh or death metal, black metal is not their go-to music. I'm curious, when you first started working with the Philharmonic Orchestra, for example, what was their response to hearing Septic Flesh's music without the orchestral accompaniment?
I don't know. I was not there.
I was about to say, you guys played them an instrumental track without the vocals.
Yes, we provide him. We provide the conductor, the music sheets, and the conductor is the most important part of the chain, because the orchestra obeys to the conductor. He provides them their sheets, the music sheets, and they direct the result. We're given what they are used to have notes.
Yeah.
So they play notes. It's music. What we create is music. But if you play the same notes from a guitar, the result changes. If you play the same notes from oboe, for example, or tuba, the result changes. So what we provide is musical, and has a lot of, as we said before, soundtrack emotion and outlook. So they are used to play for soundtracks. So for them it's something familiar. But definitely, I don't know how they feel when they listen to the album when it's released with all the other parts together.
Yeah.
I don't know.
When it comes to the orchestral music, the choir, all of that sort of thing, that's also written by the band. There's no additional improvisation allowed from the conductor, anyone in the orchestra. It's kind of, you guys write it note for note. This is what the cellos have to play. This is what the oboes have to play. Whatever the case. I mean, that's unreal. Just the scale of that. I like working with over 100 musicians. I mean, how stressful is that?
Well, it's really stressful, but Christos from the band, Christos Adoniou, he studied classical orchestration, so he's really experienced to handle the stress and to communicate with all the sections of the orchestra. It's really essential for us to have someone inside the band in the helm of the orchestra. Else, I don't know if we will follow symphonic path. We are not so happy in hiring someone else to do our stuff.
Yeah.
We are really close, really
selective,
focused in what we want to put out, and so the only option for us is to have someone from inside to direct the outcome.
You can hear the difference in the end result as well, because I think a big credit for me to Septic Flesh has always been that you use the orchestral parts to enhance the heaviness and the impact of the music. Whereas I find with a lot of other bands, I mean, even, not to slate them, but even Metallica, for example, when they used the symphony on the S&M records, some of the songs can come across as quite toothless, or they sound like the orchestra is just there for the novelty of having an orchestra playing with you. Whereas with Septic Flesh, everything seems to have a purpose, where there's a, I think about a song like Martyrs, for example, on Codex Omega. The kind of breakdown towards the sort of that latter half of the track where Spiros is going Martyrs, you've got the whole orchestra kind of going in. I've listened to that on very big high-end sound systems, and again, you can hear it was written to enhance the intensity and the drama and the pomp and circumstance of that particular piece. So it's definitely very different the way you use it to the way other bands use it.
Yes, because it is a part of day one, the orchestral stuff. It's not something that we put at the last moment. It's not just to put makeup to the face. It's part of the face. So actually, there are some songs that from day one were created having an orchestra in mind, and we had to figure out the metal element, the opposite way around. And these kind of songs are always the most difficult, because you have so many options you can use, so different types of rhythm sections and riffing and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, when we find what works, this is the key for us. What works, because you can try to impress and put stuff above stuff, but it doesn't work that way. You have to remain focused, to have a solid vision, and to remain focused through the whole process, and especially make the proper decisions at the end, at the production, to let the song breathe.
I like your analogy, by the way, that it's not makeup, it is the face. I think that's the perfect way to describe the way that you use orchestration. Because with a lot of bands, again, not to run anyone down, but a lot of bands, it really does sound like it's just makeup. But you mentioned that it's, this was kind of how a lot of the music in the early days was written. Could you ever have imagined when you were, doing Misty Places of Dawn, Esopron, or any of those records, that it would get to the scale that you're operating on right now?
No. It was really hard to play metal in Greece back then.
Yeah.
It was really primitive.
Yeah.
Situation. We were striving to manage to put our vision out in a proper manner. And actually, after a couple of albums, we started going out from Greece to Sweden to record in order to achieve exactly what we wanted. So we couldn't imagine back then that we could have in our disposal so many different instruments and that we will be able to incorporate them inside our music exactly as we were imagined.
Yeah.
Back then we had to depend on samplers, synths, but indeed you can say that the philosophy of the band didn't change, because also the elder songs were symphonic in nature. There were layers of music. There were not just one riff and that's it, and one melody. There were melodies above melodies, but now we have the luxury to give the melodies to different instruments. So that affects also the guitar, and it's something that you have to put also your ego back, to lower your ego, because for instance there are songs that started on a guitar, composition of guitar, but for instance when I wrote A Desert Throne, there were so many guitar melodies on the song, but when I gave the song to Christos, made some really interesting choices to the melodies, giving them to different instruments. And when we listened to the different options sounded better.
I thought you were about to say, you learned the lesson, never give my favorite riffs to Christos, because he'll give them away to the orchestra.
No. Also, Christos gives us his songs, and he accepts the solutions that we give. It's this is for all of us, and Seth also. That Seth creates a lot of songs. I have to say, most people are not. He's in the shadows because Christos is the symphonic master of the band. So I think that Seth is a little bit in the shadows of creation, but he's a really dominant factor in the creation of the songs. Seth. He provides a lot of songs and ideas and lyrics, but there is this situation. Also, Cream provides riffs. That's really interesting to note. That he's not only a drummer; he can provide a solid riff, and also his role is really important for the band, because the drums also, in a way, guide the riffing. And so in Septic Flesh, there are many different ideas combined, and until the end, you don't know how the song is going to sound.
That must make it really exciting, the creation process, though,
yes,
because
exactly.
You'll kind of have started, I guess, an idea, in your bedroom or in the band room, and then by the time that it gets onto the record, it's metastasized into something completely different.
Exactly. Not completely, but something different that the first vision, but better. This is what we want, to have the result. The result is the only thing that counts. To have a great result, and but if you see it from the point of view of working, it's a lot of work because you have to change stuff all the time, especially also for the lyrics, because I have to write the lyrics, and then some parts are gone, and some lyrics are in the air, So I have to also change the lyrics all the time until the finalization of the song. And it's a long process to finalize the songs because we listen to them again and again. We have, of course, 80% ready, but the 20% that remains is so many times really responsible for altering the whole atmosphere of the song.
Yeah. And I guess also when you're playing live, it leaves very, very little room for error. Like your timing, because of the fact you're using backing tracks in most cases to play with the symphony or to have that element there. There's no changing that. And even I guess even if you're live, like when you guys did the Symphonic live record, I mean you can tell the orchestration, how tight everything has to be, how well coordinated everything has to be. I mean it's a whole different ball game from two guitarists, a bassist, a drummer, and a vocalist.
Yes, you don't have room for mistakes, simply. No. Especially the live with the orchestra. Imagine that the orchestra, those people are looking at the conductor, and the conductor is the most important part. If the conductor loses touch from the band, the others follow the conductor. It will be chaos. It's not something that you can stop and then to say, okay, do it again. It's the song is flowing, so the things are really tight, must be really tight. It's definitely something that push us, makes us a little nervous, and frustrated, but we managed to provide the result that we want. It's difficult, but it's good.
So for Infernus Symphonica, for example, how much practice would have gone into the performance that you presented on that record?
Well, there were months of preparation, and Christos was in touch all the time with us responsible for the orchestra. We had a really good communication. They were doing a lot of rehearsals, and Christos was aware about the rehearsals and made suggestions, stuff like that. And of course, that was only the phase one, the first phase of the project, because then when we arrived in Mexico, we also had with the band all together rehearsals. That was also something really important, because the musicians had to listen to the whole structure of the songs, not only their stuff, and have a guide in their mind how things must be. But the result, I think, speaks for itself.
How many times have you played as a band with that setup, with that, the choirs and the symphony and everything, the way that it was presented on Infernus Symphonica?
This was the first time, because of the budget restrictions, of course. It's not possible to do it all the time, and we were waiting for the specific moment that all the pieces of the puzzle will fit together. And we had some other considerations in our mind. The Mexico proposal was really solid, and the venue was great. The organization was exactly as the organization should be. So this was actually our first attempt. Things went really well. And so now we feel even more confident to make this experience again, to bring it to Europe. Unfortunately, our plans were, put in the ice because of the COVID situation. We have to find a timeline that things will be normal to continue to this path. But the lives with the orchestra will be, of course, limited, very special lives in specific places. Because also it's a matter of the budget. It's a huge budget. And the logistics, are not allowing.
Like I was just about to say, you're literally having to pay over 100 people to be there, just musicians. It's not even just the sound tech, everything like that has to go with transporting the instruments, all that sort of thing. I mean, that must be an eye-watering amount, like Rammstein money. So
we are expensive band.
Yeah.
Fortunately, until now, we managed to cover our expenses. But it's a matter of being really passionate about what you are doing. You can do the same stuff with the half people. It's about also loving what you are doing.
Yeah. So I want to talk a bit about those old days because, as I said, I first discovered you with Death Is Just the Beginning, Volume 3. As we were talking now, I was thinking back to some of my old favorites, like Rain off of Esoptron was always one of my favorite tracks. Succubus Priestess is another song. Would you ever consider going back and re-recording some of those old songs, maybe closer to the vision of what you ideally would have wanted them to sound like when you first wrote them? I'm just looking, having a gander at Mystic Places of Dawn as well as at some of my favorite stuff there. Chasing the Chimera, I loved. Pale Beauty of the Past, I thought that was also one of my favorites. And then Behind the Iron Mask, I also really like. But Pale Beauty of the Past, Rain, and Succubus Priestess, if those three could get redone, I'd be a very happy man. But would you ever consider revisiting them?
Well, it's not a bad idea. But for bonus situation, let's say.
Yeah.
Because I think that you will lose the magic if you re-record the whole album.
Yeah.
No matter that the production will be 100 times better now, and of course if you use a real drummer, everything will be really better. Great improvement to the songs and the sound. But when you are recording something, it's like a time capsule, and the mic gets the emotion, doesn't get only the notes. There is magic going on, and the magic of the moment, and this magic can never be repeated.
Yeah.
It will be something else. Of course, the melodies, they will be the same, the songs will be the same, but different. It will be something different.
Yeah,
it will be good, of course, good, but different.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm generally speaking, I'm not really the biggest fan of re-recordings. I think the only one that I really liked was the First Strike, Still Deadly, the Testament re-recording. But I'm also a real Testament nerd, so it's I'm a bit biased when it comes to them. There's not a lot they can do. I'm one of the people that even liked Demonic when it came out. But yeah, like I said, those older songs, they just popped into my head as we were talking. I was thinking to myself, man, I would, just out of curiosity, just to hear what Rain would sound like if you did it now would be incredible. But you also touched on something earlier that piqued my interest. You mentioned how primitive and difficult it was to be in a metal band in the early days in Greece. Talk to me a little bit about those early days, because I kind of feel like the Greek scene has really come into its own over the last couple of years. Yourselves, Rotten Christ, being the tip of the spear, as far as I'm concerned. But another band that I've been raving about on this podcast for a long time, UTKENA, I think do just phenomenal work. And there's a lot of other bands that are awesome. So it feels like the two of you, Rotten Christ, Septic Flesh, were kind of the bands that led the charge. You've obviously all gone on to do really exciting things, but I'm curious to know what that scene was like in the early days.
For starters, we were really cult because the society, the Greek society, treated us as bad people.
Yeah.
They avoided.
Very, very similar to South African society, where I'm from originally. So.
Yes,
Yeah.
We were deviating from the norm from the Greek norm. We were not treated with respect from our own people, from the Greek people. Also, it was difficult to communicate what we wanted to the people that were working in studios and stuff like that, because they didn't knew how to treat the guitar and the metal instruments. They knew how to treat the bouzouki and traditional stuff and pop Greek music and stuff like that. So we had a lot of obstacles. Also, we played in really strange places for live shows. Everything was really difficult.
So when you say strange places, how strange? Like sex dungeon strange, or what sort of places would you play in?
In porn cinema, we have played. In a porn cinema, we have played.
So with the rest of the deviants.
Yes. Yes. So there was a festival there that we played.
Great. Watch a band and take in a movie.
Yes, behind was the cinema stuff and the stuff like that. Of course, no movie at the time of the playing.
Yeah.
We were the porn anyway.
That's the first show you played without a shirt on. Crazy experiences. Because the normal venues avoided having us because they were afraid that we will break their stuff, that the audience will misbehave, and because there was a lot of some dancing and stuff like that at the time. You can imagine that people were always on the stage and off the stage all the time, mics on the air, really raw experience. Anyway, but on the other hand, this kind of difficulties that we had ironed our will, and we just kept going on. And of course, we became really friends with all the guys at the time that attempted to play extremely. Eventually, there were specific places that people were hanging out, that were listening to metal music and extreme music. So, this is what I mean about cult, because, a lot of people that now are more famous, and also some that never get much fame, but are still cult. For instance, bands, we had bands like Necromandia, Varathron, really cult stuff. All those guys, we were hanging together and discussing about the scene, and also it was a period with the fanzines, the really different kind of situation, tape trading. We were the good old days.
The good old days, yes. There was fun to this. But of course, now things are more professional in all levels, and you can find whatever you want if you are a metal musician, you don't have to strive to find it. And also, the perception of the people is more is cooler. I mean, from society. I mean,
yeah.
You are not the black sheep of society. They consider us Satanists, and people to be avoided anyway.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, actually, before I ask you this question, just a comment, and I have mentioned this before to other guests, but I do think there's something lost in the magic of the struggle to discover new music, to find new music. And you mentioned the tape trading days. It was very similar for me. I grew up in South Africa. Much of my, music discovery, especially when I got into death metal and black metal, came through trying to figure out what the German in a Nuclear Blast catalog meant. And then we would go to, I had a very good friend who we would use his dad's credit card. We would all pool money together. We would figure out, okay, we're going to buy these 20 or 30 CDs. He would, because he didn't want to he didn't want us to pay his parents for the phone, to use their phone to call Germany because it would be too expensive. He would go from shop to shop telling them that he needed to call his mum to come and collect him. And then he would phone, they said, okay, yeah, go use the phone in the back. And then he goes to the phone in the back, takes out the catalog, starts ordering. And then when they figure out what he's doing and they looking funny, okay, I have to go. I'll call you back in a second. Goes next shop. And that's literally what we did that multiple times. But the thing about that is, because you go through that struggle of discovering the bands and discovering the music. I remember when I heard Ophidian Wheel for the first time. I even remember it was a Friday lunchtime. Friend called me, said the CDs have arrived, and I'm like, yay! Go to his house, and I listened to that record for the first time. When I heard the song Ophidian Wheel, I will never forget how I felt when I heard the opening riff to that song for the first time. And the thing is, I personally, I'm not one of those people that thinks that, the scene has lost its spirit and all of that stuff. So because musically, the music that's coming out is phenomenal. And I think it keeps raising the bar. You guys are an example of a band who've stayed relevant for a long time. The bar keeps getting raised with every one of the records that you put out. But just the joy of having to wait, in my case, 3 months for a CD to arrive, to be shipped and then, make its way through to your front door. And when you finally get to hear it, it's one of the best feelings in the world. And it's a shame to me that people aren't really going to get to experience that anymore.
I totally agree with you. I still see dreams. Back at the time, I had a PO box on the post office. That stuff was coming, magazines, tapes, whatever, and I was going once in a week and opening my locker and find out stuff. And I keep have this dream even after all those years, and it's a really good dream. I feel really nice, because I open it and I find something new, something interesting, something, it's like a treat, like you're waiting for something that turns out to be good, and you don't know it, you don't know exactly what it is.
Yeah. Well,
before you have it.
We ordered Mystic Places of Dawn and Esotron just because of Return to Carthage, and then we knew, okay, Ophidian Wheel was going to be good. We ordered Fallen Temple as well, but very often I would discover bands just because I would read the description of the record, and it sounded quite cool. Like I said, trying to figure out what they said in German. So I remember when I got Ceremony of Opposites and when I got Wolfheart, and I'm trying to think of a couple of others that stand out. Battles in the North, just stuff like that. Just again, there's a real excitement and a thrill to that. I'll also say, as we're on the topic of Ophidian Wheel, the woman that you had singing on that record, you had a couple of photos of her in the CD booklet. When I was about 16, I think, when that album came out. I had a man-sized crush on that woman, and I was like, "This is the most gorgeous woman I've ever seen in my entire life." But so we're talking just about the societal perception of metal musicians in Greece in the early days. How big of a role did religion play in your early upbringing in Greek culture around the time that the band, was getting up and running?
Well, Greece was conservative at the time, and of course, religion still is powerful today, but then it was even more powerful. But it was a kind of people judging you by your looks. That was the most irritating thing. If you had long hair and you were wearing a T-shirt of Ozzy Osbourne, you were not seeing well, from the people. Most of them, of course, there were also some people that were more acceptable. We didn't have had problems with people chasing us and stuff like that. Like I suppose that in some other countries things are rougher. I suppose. But this kind of when the other is looking at you in a not so polite manner is irritating because of your looks and what you do. And also, it's also a bit irritating when you are a musician and the other disrespects you because they believe that what you play is not music.
Yeah.
All this kind of approaches were irritating, at least for me. But at a point, you reach to a point that you simply don't care.
Yeah.
And you are who you are. You do what you do. That's it. Take it or leave it.
Yeah.
You don't fucking care if the others accept you or not.
Yeah.
But gradually things now Greece have changed because now people are focused in more bullshit, different kind of bullshit. The whole world, I think, is deteriorating.
Yeah.
And this you can find this social media madness and stuff that's going on all the time, and impossible ways of thinking, and really crazy ideas that are not fit to today, today's mentality.
Yeah.
But anyway, you have to be yourself, and no matter what.
I often feel when I think about the modern world, I think about the final scene in Fight Club where Helena Bonham Carter and Edward Norton are standing holding hands and the Pixies song is playing and those buildings are busy crashing. I kind of almost feel like as a species, I kind of feel the human race right now are Helena Bonham Carter and Ed Norton. It definitely feels to me like that. And actually, it's probably dovetails quite nicely into talking about the themes on this record, because I've read a quote on your Facebook page where you were talking about some of what the whole concept of modern primitive is about. And I think one that came directly from you was related to the cover art. It says the modification of the main human head in the cover symbolizes the modernization process of the primitive side of human nature. An inner conflict is caused by an erroneous mental code that contradicts the current evolutionary stage of the human species and is against nature in general. And I was very keen to kind of get your take on that, and if you kind of wanted to expand a little bit more about what your thoughts were around that, your intent around that.
Yes, it's a fact that the current situation, as it is developing, it shows us one thing, that we are not the king of this world as we imagined. The king thinks that wears this beautiful robe, but he's naked. and he's unable to deal with his duty, and is actually someone really chaotic. And so we see that we return to a primitive stage instead of moving forwards. It's like a circle. It's like the ape becomes human, and a human becomes the ape. It's also, somebody told me in an interview something really that fits, I think, to this notion. What Einstein said about the next world war, that it will be with rocks, because it seems that we return to this kind of brutal reality. And I think that the problem is mental. It's as the statement says, it's like a code lurking inside the brain. It's not digital, it's a biological code that just explodes and initiates, and leads us to our self-destruction. And especially with the new album, there is a lot of consideration about the future of mankind. But I won't say that it is pessimistic. It's just, I think it's just like trying to find out what doesn't work in order to fix it. Not just to say that, okay, we are fucked. No, it's just, okay, we're doing something wrong, or many things wrong. What are those things? How can we change? Because we have to wake up. It's like a wake-up call. And it's like you must imagine how the future will turn out if we keep on doing what we are doing right now.
I heard a really interesting quote today by George Friedman, who's a geopolitical analyst that I really like. He was talking about the current situation in the world, particularly pertaining to Russia and the Ukraine. But he was just talking about kind of wars generally and how they foment, how they get created. One thing that he said that I thought was really, really hit home with me was he said the tragedy of the human condition is that we can't, as a species, just sit back and be satisfied with our circumstances. And if you think about the last 3 years, I mean, isn't that self-destructive nature that you just mentioned now? COVID, man-made, arguably. The complete and utter mess that's been created by Putin in the Ukraine. I mean, it's a man-made mess. There's a lot of actors involved in that, in and around that enabled that got us to a point where we're doing that. But I think we almost got too comfortable in where we were. Like, I've also had another geopolitical analyst who I really like, Peter Zion. He was talking about the changing global order and how people completely forget that this world that we live in, where we could trade with any country we wanted to, where we could travel freely, where food was reasonably abundant for most, and generally speaking, where life was good and there was an established order. It's only been like that for a very, very, very small period of time, arguably only since the Second World War, so not even 100 years. But it's almost like we got used to that too quickly. Then we got lazy, then we got complacent, and now we're really in danger. And I suspect, unfortunately, we are going to end up losing that.
Yes, it seems that we are prone to decline. It is a matter of mentality, I think. It's the way that we are not investing in our mentality. We get lazy,
We want fast food. We want fast food for thought, because actually the brain is like a muscle, and if you just let this muscle without working out, then becomes useless. And also, it's about ethics. I think it's not only the rationality. There is an ethical problem, because we are always avoiding seeing the ethics, especially when we are privileged and everything just flows and everything goes well. We fail to sympathize with those that are unfortunate, and only we use them just to say something for a conversation. There is so much ego, but in a wrong sense, because if you have ego in the right sense, you are empowering yourself.
Yeah.
But where I'm talking about ego to discuss whatever topic only to get in the spotlight. This is the situation right now. And this is a situation of laziness, moral laziness, mental laziness, and probably something in the DNA of the humankind, something that it's just following norms, like you can say a monkey society.
Yeah.
That one monkey does something and all the other monkeys do the same in order to be this inside the society. And I think that we have only two options. The one option that is the current option that we have decided to allow to exist is the option of extinction, because eventually we will kill ourselves and everything around us, because we are chaotic. We are not glad to just kill ourselves. We want to kill the whole planet.
Yeah.
And the second option is to make a U-turn, to change radically. But in order to change, you have to be active. Laziness is not good for change.
Yeah.
And this is maybe why the people that want power prefer to have the crowd lazy.
Yeah.
Because they don't get action and they accept whatever. So it's about, but I think that it's only in a personal level, because each one has to strive for himself to be better. You cannot make better everybody else. You have to start from yourself.
Yeah.
But everything starts from thoughts. We have to think about it first. It's the first step. If we don't even think about it, then we are doomed.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely feel like, you mentioned about laziness. I think the intellectual laziness, that's the real cancer in society, because the intellectual laziness, that cancer, it's fed by a lot of incredible distraction as well. A lot of things that the news media, the governments, the powers that be are able to pump up to seem incredibly important to us, whether it's and I've spoken about it on this podcast, but Joe Rogan, not being allowed to be on Spotify. I mean, at the end of the day, it boils down to, is a multimillionaire going to be able to be rich on Spotify, or is he going to be able to be rich just doing things by himself? It doesn't mean anything in the grand scheme of things. And there's countless examples of that. While all of that nonsense is ongoing, Will Smith being, slapping Chris Rock at the Oscars, it dominates the news cycle. But that's not what's moving the dial in the world. And I heard a great comment by Eugene Robinson of Oxbow, who was on the Everything Went Black podcast a little while back, and he hit the nail on the head. He said, "Do you think that Warren Buffett, Ray Dalio, the guys that are moving the needle in the world, do you think they spend 5 seconds thinking about?" I mean, it wasn't. It was before that, but 5 seconds thinking about Will Smith slapping Chris Rock, or whether Joe Rogan's going to get to stay on Spotify or not. They don't give a shit. Nor unfortunately do people like Putin. Maybe if he spent more time thinking about that, he wouldn't be such an asshole. But it's there's an awful lot of distraction that gets thrown our way, and unfortunately, I think with this, you touched on social media earlier as well. Social media has created this kind of fast food culture for our brains. I know that book sales are up year over year, but I must be honest, I don't see any evidence of people actually reading more books. I think they buy books for decoration at home, but the majority of what the average person seems to be able to bring to the table when it comes to intellectual thought, it's just blurbs off Twitter. It's nothing else.
Yeah,
and most of what's on Twitter is bullshit. So.
I totally agree. We are feeded with bullshit all the time. Every second, our brain is provided the most useless information that is just for entertainment of a second.
Yeah,
not even entertainment of an hour, of a second. And so our brain definitely is tempted to try second by second something different. It's like an addiction. So this addiction also is affecting concentration, because when your concentration is divided all the time, and you have many different elements of distract you, then it's really difficult for you to read a book, as you say. You buy the book, you put it on the shelf, you start the first page, and then you fall asleep.
Yeah.
So then you buy the second book to see how the second book is.
Yeah.
And you continue
to the end. Okay. I know what happens in this one, but it even shows in how people consume music, because you often hear people talk about, and you see bands doing it as well. They don't seem to care anymore about the sequencing of a record, but you often hear bands complain and say, well, I'm just going to start putting out singles now because no one listens to records end to end anymore. And I will admit, I fell into that trap for a long period of time. And when I started forcing myself a couple of years ago to, like, if I listen to an album, I commit. I don't give a shit if I don't like 3 songs in the middle. I'm listening through to this end to end. It's just so much more rewarding. And you also get to pick out the great from the truly great, maybe the great from the mediocre, because you're not concentrating on those 2-3 songs that you like. And actually, as we all know, because we grew up with cassettes, you couldn't just skip past it because eventually the cassette would snap or whatever the case may be. But some of those songs that you didn't like at first, they grow on you and they become your favorites later on. You're absolutely right in that you say it's a mindset shift. And when but I do think, and anyone listening to this, will probably know I've touched on these themes in various shapes on the podcast many times before. But if you invest the time and you have that discipline to read the book end to end, listen to the record end to end, focus and pay attention, and not go the bite-sized route, it's extremely rewarding to you intellectually. It's extremely rewarding to you personally. It's extremely rewarding to you spiritually as well.
Yes, I totally agree. And as you said about the music, in the past it was a kind of ritual. Yeah. You had the vinyl, you put it, you have on your hands the album, you read the lyrics, you sing to the world of the music and the creation. It's really rewarding, as you say. When you have the digital, it's really tempting to push the button and skip this and skip that. So it becomes like a quick fix rather than the enjoyment of diving inside the music. and it's important, at least for me as a listener, when I listen to something new, to have to go through the whole journey from the first song to the last song, because also I realize that the band, when creates something, has a structure, and there is a certain logic for the songs to be in the specific order. Of course, I understand, totally also understand that the singles have power now, especially now that it's a fast food age, you can say. But one should not stop to the singles. The singles are just, you can say, just to point out that okay, we exist. This is our kind of stuff. Just to drive you inside the music of a band, but not to remain to the single. And there are situations that as also so many stuff is released from time to time, if you are not focused in something, you lose it, because something else comes out, and you listen to the next single of another band, and etc. So it's really easy to lose something really good and really well structured.
Yeah.
And find it out many months later.
Yeah.
That you return to say, let's listen to the Septic Flesh album. How was it?
You guys are putting out your record in a pretty crowded month as well, because you've got Bluthaus Nord record coming out that month. There's a couple of like big releases coming out in May. Like I do feel like we're starting to see the floodgates open now of everybody who was working on music during lockdown. All of their music is starting to come out now. So I mean, if you're a fan right now, it's literally like a kid with Christmas presents just falling from the sky. One question I wanted to ask you before we finished off, and this is a cult question as maybe you'll get, but Aeneas was your solo project.
Yes,
but nothing ever came of that. What was the? Are you ever going to do something with that solo project?
I want to do. The problem was timing with Aeneas, because it was something that I was planning to do after Septic Flesh, after we were disbanded, and at the time that I was preparing the promos, right at the specific moment, I received a call from Seth, and he proposed to be back, and to make a second coming as a Septic Flesh. So from that point on, my focus was turned 100% to Septic Flesh, and Septic Flesh were growing, and also in my life I had many different stuff going on, that my mind was not able to focus to something additional from Septic Flesh and all the other stuff that I had. And when you start postponing things, you lose the momentum.
Yeah.
That was the problem with Aeneas, because right at the beginning that it was ready to be launched, it has this turn of events that influenced the existence of this project. However, as I have a lot of songs also from the past, and also some songs that I created during all these years that are not songs fitting to Septic Flesh, as Septic Flesh are right now. And you can say that these songs are more like on the past of Septic Flesh orientation, on the first period of Septic Flesh. but with addition of modern influences. And you can say that it's more in the traditional metal with some gothic outtones rather than death metal, and with clean vocals all the time. So I think that it deserves the chance to the project to have a release. All these songs to be heard from people that will find the songs I think interesting, especially the old fans of Septic Flesh.
Yeah.
It's a matter, when I will find the proper time, because it's something that I want to do, but I never have put a deadline. If I put to myself a deadline, then the project will be out. It's only this a matter of decision. But deep inside me, I want to give a green light to the project. I don't know if I would keep the name Aenaos or if I will change it, because as many years passed, and I have also another name in my mind, but I won't say it right now. But as you can say, it's something that I want to do.
Yeah. So you're a veteran of the scene for, I think, over 30 years now, if I'm not mistaken. What, yeah. So you mentioned modern touches and things like that. What of the new generation of music, what is out there that you find interesting and that you find exciting at the moment?
Yeah. Well, Gojira, for example, is something exciting because they have their own style. And of course, when we were talking about modern, I'm not talking about today's band. I'm talking about bands of the last decade. Anyway, I like Gojira. I also like a band from just to remember, Igor. I don't know if you are aware.
Yeah, know them.
About Igor. Igor is a really crazy band, and I like craziness and stuff that really gets out of the norm. Meshuggah is a really great band.
You were going to be label mates with Meshuggah, and then they jumped over to Atomic Fire. I'm not gonna scratch on that, because that did, just from the outside, it's like Nuclear Blast gets sold, Atomic Fire begins, and then all these bands suddenly disappear over to Atomic Fire. But I shan't say anything. Have Nuclear Blast been treating you well, though? Because this is the first record you guys are doing for them, right?
Yes. We have a really human interaction with the guys, the team working with Nuclear Blast. We feel really comfortable, a really nice and direct communication that is really important. Also, artistically, they leave us to do whatever we want. Another really important thing for us. And I see from this beginning that it's actually this month that we released the two singles. I have a really great impression. My first impression is really great. Also, I see from day one that it was a good choice for us, because I see that we have gained a lot of attention from day one to our music. And so I feel really optimistic about the collaboration.
Well, my friend, I'm very excited to hear the new record in its entirety when it comes out. Thank you so much for your time. Absolute blast catching up with you. Like I said, the 16-year-old me is very excited right now. because you guys played a very big role in my formative years musically. So, but thank you very much. Take care of yourself, and hopefully I will catch you at some point down the road.
Yes, thank you also very much for this really good conversation. Also, thank you for your support all those years. I feel really great when I find out people like you that are aware about our beginnings and followed Septic Flesh for such a long time. So totally respect to you, and maybe I will see you somewhere on the upcoming live shows.
Well, if you're in the UK, then I'll speak to Joe and I'll see if I can at least can come and say hello. And yeah, the old stuff. I still, talking earlier about like, you study the vinyl, you study the lyrics. I remember reading. I think the lyric is reality is a rain, drops are falling, but are they the same? Yeah. I was like, fuck, this is brilliant. So, all right, my friend, take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
That was a track called Neuromancer. It's off of Modern Primitive, which will see the light of day thanks to Nuclear Blast Records on May the 20th. Massive, massive thank you to Sotiris for coming on. I'm a bigger Septic Flesh fan, having left that conversation than I was going in, and as you guys probably picked up over the course of that conversation, I was a huge Septic Flesh fan going in. Hopefully that's not going to be the last time he's on the show, but like I said, make sure that you check out that record when it comes out, and if you've ignored all of the stuff that they've put out in the last couple of years, you are missing out. Let's talk now about new music, and if you listened to the intro to this podcast, you would have noticed that I mentioned that the new Ultha record has blown me away. Before I get into the reasons for why that is, a bit of background on this band. They were formed in 2014, and they released their debut called Pain Cleanses Every Doubt in 2015. They followed that up with the extremely well-received Converging Sins in 2016, as well as the Inextricable Wandering in 2018, and then their last release was an EP in 2020 called Floors of Heaven. They were reasonably quiet after that, but then again, most bands were, at least from a touring perspective, and a lot of bands I think were probably sitting on material over the lockdown, which is why we see so much good stuff coming out now. But anyway, something worth noting about Ultha is that they feature, and I believe the brainchild of the band is Ralph Schmidt, who is a regular co-host on the Everything Went Black podcast with Mike Hill. And he's also in another great post-punk band called Ropes of Night, which Mike and I discussed in our Best of 2021 episode, which we did back on Into the Necrosphere number 112. And that brings us squarely to All That Has Been True. It dropped on April 1st through Vendetta Records with no PR, no big announcements, and no fanfare preceding it. In fact, I think Mike even pointed out to Ralph on a couple of episodes back of Everything Went Black, when they spoke about it, that he only realized the album was out when he saw posts popping up all over it. Posts popping up about it on social media. They are, by all accounts, pretty close. So, Ralph definitely kept this one secret, as did all of the band. Again, my understanding is this was intentional. And it does feel like, even though this is something that Funeral Mist also did at the back end of last year, that kind of, sort of sudden surprise release approach, it feels very suited to the music that make up the fourth installment in the Ultha discography. Listening through the 7 tracks on All That Has Never Been True, you really do get a sense of isolation and despair, and then a few glimpses to sort of provide levity of hope, or at the very least, a degree of resilience. How much of that comes from Ralph or the band's collective experience during lockdown, I don't know about. The good news is I will be inviting him on the show, and as a matter of fact, by the time you guys listen to this episode of the podcast, that episode may well have already been recorded, but he's going to come on the show to discuss it. One thing that is absolutely irrefutable, in my opinion, is that every single song on this record is an absolute masterclass in atmospheric black metal. Dispel is the first track, and probably one of the more straightforward songs on the record. It opens with a single organ note that very quickly fades into a just nasty blasting riff that has the familiarity of previous Ultha output, but it also feels a lot larger in a way. Like the whole soundscape feels much, much bigger than anything that I had heard on Converging Sins, which was probably the Ultha record that I'd paid most attention to prior to this one. That Altar Feigned is the song that comes up next. It initially continues at that same breakneck pace, but then the record kind of goes through a bit of a gear shift, and the experimental side of the band really starts coming out. So this song slows down to a kind of doomy dirge, with a really kind of densely layered riff that just repeats for a period of time, is quite hypnotic in the way that it's delivered. And I have to say this because people are going to point it out if I don't mention it. So this is why I'm leaning into it. This is one of the only times that I have ever used a saxophone, I've ever heard a saxophone used properly on a black metal record. And that is saying an awful lot, because you guys know that I despise saxophone for the most part, but on this song it is used extremely well. One of the most striking things I think about this record to me is how cinematic a lot of the songs sound. If not for their entirety, then they at least have these lengthy sequences that very easily could suit a movie. The track that comes right after Der Alte Feind is one called Bathed in Lightning, Bathed in Heat, and that's a great example of what I'm talking about. It starts off with nearly 4 minutes of just this kind of beautifully haunting soundscape that, to me, when I was listening to it, evoked images of the remake of Suspiria. And it almost has that slightly kind of Tom York feel to it, in that there's an unease behind the beauty, but absolutely stunning. And what it serves to do is not only create something that's a cut above, I guess, the average riff orientated black metal record, but it means that when the shrieking chaos kicks back in, when the blasting kicks back in, it feels that much more impactful and that much more meaningful. And this is something that you'll hear all across the record. A couple of other things that you hear across the record as well are Ralph's post-punk influences. If not overtly coming to the fore, they almost definitely inform some of the songwriting on the record. There's parts that remind me a little bit of Tombs. There's parts that remind me of, just pure great, I guess, old school second wave black metal. But every single song from start to finish is basically perfect. To me, end to end, this is a record that is as close to perfection as I've heard in a long time. It sounds to me like a very carefully constructed journey that takes you down some very unexpected paths, but is consistently evocative, consistently captivating, and is delivered with a vein of really tangible emotion that runs throughout the album. The last record that came out that I could use that I feel I could accurately use that description for was Exuvia by Runes of Beverast. And if you've listened to this podcast for a period of time, you know how I feel about that record, and you know how big of a compliment that is to Ultha. So I'm gonna stop right there. If I've not done enough to convince you yet, then the next song hopefully will do so. But the album is All That Has Never Been True. As I said, it's available on Vendetta Records. It is, without a doubt, one of the best records that has come out this year so far. Stunning, stunning stuff. And I'm about to play you a track called Carry On to Walk with Spiders. The song is Carry On to Walk with Spiders. It's off the record All That Has Never Been True by Ultha, and it is absolutely goddamn fantastic. It's available on Vendetta Records. As with all of the bands that I feature on this podcast, I'll post the link in the description to the show. Like I said, I'm definitely going to have Ralph on the podcast at some point in the very near future. But in the meantime, if you head over to Bandcamp and you buy yourself anything, then do let him know that it was old Jackson at Into the Necrosphere that sent you. With that out of the way, let's magically whisk ourselves away to Metal Storm, listen to some music, and talk some shit. All right. The first headline reads, Kreator reveal new single. I got a message from Marco this morning, and this is why I've said that it will be fun to start doing some of these news rant and react segments with him, because he is a stoic and extremely funny guy. But anyway, the message read, and I probably should paraphrase it, it's with something to the effect of, new Kreator single is awful. They have become a pop band. I don't know. I didn't like that first single that they put out. I mean, I recognize their immense influence on pretty much all the music that I listen to and play on this podcast. But I will admit and agree with Marco. I believe that they have lost their way somewhat. That Hate Uber Alice song that they put out before was fucking terrible. But let's hear if Old Man Marco is correct about Strongest of the Strong, which is the title of the new single, or whether or not it is actually very good. Let me hit play. Let's see what we think. Okay, so I'm not going to differ from Marco entirely, but it actually doesn't sound as bad as I thought it was going to sound. It's definitely not as atrocious as the first single. I mean, let's get that out the way. I like that little double bass gallop that they have in the opening riff. I've never been a big fan of twin guitar melodies, you know, the kind of Iron Maiden type twin guitar melodies. I don't really like them. I think they sound wimpish, is probably the most charitable way to describe them. But, yeah, I mean, it's not... Am I going to, to feel this way, or feel the way about Hate Uber Alice that I feel about the new Ultha record? No. But if somebody played this to me at their house, or had this on in the background, I wouldn't feel hugely aggrieved by it. Let's give it a few more seconds. Yeah, it's all right. 6 out of 10. That's what I would give it. Strongest of the Strong reminds me of another song title called Strength Beyond Strength. And that, of course, was Pantera, and that song is 1,000 times better than anything Kreator has ever done. I know that's controversial, but so be it. Anyways, let's move on. Mantar, new record detailed. German duo Mantar is pleased to unveil details and first single in connection with the upcoming new full-length effort Pain is Forever and This Is the End, which I believe Mike would refer to as a non-life-affirming title. The latter will be unleashed upon the masses on July 15th via Metal Blade Records. They used to be on Nuclear Blast Records, which is why I was about to say that. I quite like Mantar. it's a weird thing that I have with them. They're a band I like when I listen to them and when a new record comes out, and then I find myself very rarely able to muster the excitement to go back to them. I also didn't like that covers record of theirs very much, but that's beside the point. The song is called Hang 'em Low, so the rats can... and the rest of the song title is cut off. Anyway, let's give that a quick listen and see what we think. That's not bad. It's amazing what one note can do to a song. In the verse, there's a structure that melody is following that sounds like it could be incredibly tedious and predictable and just not really my kind of thing. And they just tweak one note, and maybe it's like the third major note of that progression that's tweaked, and it just makes it much more interesting. Like it actually made me not want to hit pause straight away and say this is shit and move on. Let's get back to it. It's all right. The chorus is pretty funky. It's a reasonably catchy song. A bit of a punky vibe to it as well. I like it. Again, interestingly enough, bar gets raised, and all of a sudden, a Mantar track that you would have been excited about 5, maybe 6, 7 years ago. It comes out and you go, yeah, that's cool. But then you go straight back to some of the myriad other stuff that we've been raving about on this podcast. Because, like I said, some bands just kind of fall behind the innovation curve. Decapitated, I think, is up next. Put out Hello Death single and video. Decapitated are ready to release their new music output, Cancer Culture, on May the 27th. Today, they surprised their fans with a stunning new single and video. Check out the new track, Hello Death, featuring Tatiana Scheimluck from Ginger. The video was filmed in March with Grupa 13 in Poland, while Tatiana was filming her part in a studio in the USA. Tatiana, I believe, is originally from the Ukraine. But anyway, I'm not going to go down that road now. I haven't heard the song yet. And I just want to stress again, I know this isn't kind of a full react. I don't have the time, obviously, and none of us have the time for me to go through every single song I listen to end to end. I should probably call it, instead of reacts, I should call it first impressions. This is like getting a big... Each week I do this episode, or this part of the episode, it's like getting a long new compilation CD and kind of just flicking through it to see if there's anything that you really like the sound of. But anyway, thought I should just mention that. When I say reacts, it's not like you're going to sit here and it's going to be something like Lost in Vegas, which, by the way, is a fantastic channel. If you guys haven't checked it out yet, those two dudes are fucking awesome. Whenever I'm in a foul mood, there's a couple of ways in which I can get myself into a great mood straight away. watching those two listen to a metal song is normally the best way to do so. But anyway, let's give this this track a spin. I was undecided on the first single. Let's see how I feel about the second. I keep coming back to Carnival is Forever with this band because that was a record where every single song had a huge hook that just kind of kept you wanting more and more and more. And I mean, there was a lot of things great about that record, but the hooks on the songs were one of the big things. And I think that's what I missed on the last Decapitated record, and it's definitely what I'm missing on the on this single as well. There's no hook. It's like they're very heavy, and there's all of the boxes are being ticked, but there's just something that's missing, and I can only put it down to something that makes me want to come back, or makes the song not sound as nondescript as it's currently sounding. Which is a shame because these guys are capable of an awful lot more. Organic Hallucinosis was another record that had tons of hooks. Didn't get it quite as right as Carnival is Forever, in my opinion, but pretty hook heavy. I'll give it a little. I'll give it some breathing room, and let's see if things change. But so far, so boring. No, sorry, that is fucking wank. Not my vibe whatsoever. The hook was supposed to be her voice, but that sucks. I don't, I like women singing in bands. I'll be very honest. I do tend to prefer when I want to listen to a female front woman or a woman singing. I do tend to prefer stuff that's maybe a little on the slower, haunting, maybe even more folky side of things. I love Chelsea Wolfe. I love PJ Harvey. I also have a slight crush on a young Stevie Nicks. But in this style of music, it's never really worked for me. Next week I'm going to talk to, amongst others, Chelsea Murphy of College Calling. I thought what she did on the College Calling record was fucking incredible, but I mean, she took a whole different approach to it. She sounds like this ominous fucking sexless demon screaming throughout the whole thing. And she's actually lovely. But, just this is it's not my bag, this. I'll be curious to know what the rest of the Decapitated faithful think of it. But for my money, that's not for old Jackson. Demonical, We Conquer the Throne track premieres. Swedish death metal tyrants Demonical are premiering a music video for the new released track We Conquer the Throne in anticipation of their 7th studio album Mass Destroyer, set for release on May 6th through Agonia Records. Video clip was directed by Tobias Ritzheim of Svartna Film. We checked out Demonical a couple of weeks ago, I think, and the first single they released was very cool. So let's hear what the second one sounds like. Very, very strong Entombed vibes from this song, but that is about all it's got going for it. I like the vocalist. I think that opening riff is terrible. It sounds like something that was left on the cutting room floor by, by Entombed 20 years ago. And that solo at the start, that's guitar masturbation, pointless guitar masturbation. I'm not going to listen to this new Rammstein single because, again, I'll probably get blocked, or I'll get a copyright block for it. I got a copyright block last week. If you both watch the show on YouTube and you listen to it on Spotify, I had a clip of Chris Jericho talking at an AEW show, and the motherfuckers blocked me on YouTube. I had to cut it out. So I'm not going to take a risk with this. What I will say is this single sucks, much like the first single they released off the record, and it's a shame because I do give Rammstein far more of a pass than many other bands, and I think it's in part because of how much I love seeing them live. But the last Rammstein record had its moments. Was ich liebe, Puppe, and Deutschland were 3 fantastic songs. The rest of the album reasonably shit. I think there were 1 or 2 other songs that were okay. But the record before had its moments, and then obviously the earlier stuff was very good. But so far, both songs I've heard off of this just sounds completely uninspired to me, and I know there's been talk of the band breaking up. I would not be surprised if they break up after this record. It just doesn't sound, it doesn't sound to me like a band that are interested in making this music anymore. Very autopilot-y kind of stuff. And the imagery on this that's kind of coming out with this record, I don't give a fuck about either. I thought the music video was very beautiful for the track Zeit. I think it was the name of the first single. This new one is they mincing around transgender themes. I mean, I don't give a shit. I will, without a doubt, watch and shriek along like a woman at a Beatles show in the late 1960s when they play live. But other than that, I can't imagine myself listening to this record ever. Next up, we have Origin, who are to release Chaos Moss in June. They haven't put out music for a fucking hot minute. I think the last one they put out must have been a good 5 or 6 years ago. I'm gonna check that. I have always liked Origin up until that last record. I thought that last record they put out was not good. Unparalleled Universe, it was called, and it came out in 2017. I thought it was crap, and it seems that everyone on Metal Archive agrees because the average score for it was 66%. Omnipresent, I thought was decent. That came out in 2014. I think the last record that I really loved of theirs was Entity, and that was put out in 2011. As a matter of fact, Echoes of Decimation, Antithesis, and Entity, I think, are the 3 definitive Origin records. But seems they're back. By the looks of things, they have a new logo. They also seem to have a new deal, interesting deal. They are putting this out on June 3rd on Agonia Records in Europe and Nuclear Blast Records for the rest of the world. I'm surprised Agonia Records is doing as well as they're doing, considering all the backlash that they had to endure after they dared to release the Last Inquisition album. I had no issue with them releasing the Last Inquisition album. I had an issue with the fact that it was a fucking steaming pile of poo. But let's listen to this new Origin single. It's called Ecophagy. And let's see what the lads have been up to in the last... how long has it been? 5 years? Yeah, 5 years, I believe. So far, A for effort, F- for songwriting. I fucking hate that style of technical death metal where they're pissing around with tremolo-picked stuff and basically playing leads as riffs. I can't fucking stand it. When I listen to that, it's angry, it's fast, it's got all the stuff that would make me want to listen to a band like Origin, but because of that riff and because of the way that it's written, because there's such a big emphasis on the technical side of things, it just lacks any sort of real, kind of punishing aggression. The kind of thing that I don't care about anger without aggression, if that makes sense. This to me is anger without aggression. This sounds like a fucking child having a temper tantrum. They just happen to know how to play they happen to know their way around a decent riff. And it's a shame. Like I said, those 3 records that I mentioned are fucking fantastic to this day. And actually, when they dabbled a little bit in some more experimental stuff, they got even better. But this just is so far is making my penis pull back up in my urethra. So this first part of the song is a total write-off. I'm going to skip to the middle part. Well, let's skip 2 minutes to 2 minutes and 45 seconds. And I fucking hope that by this point, there's going to be at least some chugging, at least some sort of a breakdown, at least something resembling the kind of death metal that I am down with. That's already way better. I just don't understand why I do understand. It's their style. And there's a lot of people that like that style, by the way. So let me just stress again. I know that I come across as very opinionated when I do the segment. That's kind of the point of it. I had a dude that I've been friends with him for years. We kind of lost touch. He listened to the podcast and sent me a message a while back, and he said, when I listen to the podcast, it's like I think about what it was like hanging out with you in your bedroom, listening to music when we were teenagers. So this kind of what it basically is. Like I hope you guys feel like it's us hanging out, hopefully necking a couple of beers, or a whiskey, depending on what you're down with. And listening to some tunes, but that Origin song not really doing much for me. Up next, we have got Misery Index, Infiltrators single and video Unleashed. Misery Index are debuting a second single off the Complete Control album out on May 13th with the track Infiltrators Today. Check it out in a form of a video clip featuring live footage from a show at the Auto Bar in Baltimore, Maryland, and directed by Chris Geo. I liked that first Misery Index tune. I liked it in part because I thought that the backup vocalist, I don't know who he is, but I think he did a good job of contrasting nicely against Jason Netherton's voice. Jason Netherton's voice is cool, but it has it can become very monotonous. And it worked in Dying Fetus because you've got, the beast, John Gallagher, to your right side, to your right flank. And, he the deep vocals and the screams, they work together very well. But if it's just Jason, it's always been a bit on the boring side to me. Anyway, let's just read this next line as well before we listen to the song. Misery Index checked in with the following comment about the song. Infiltrators is certainly the most hardcore-tinged song on the album, as well as the shortest. The lyrics target those who spew divisive, dehumanizing ideologies. It's an outright rejection, and admittedly a strong one, of those who support and apologize for these people and their antisocial, fascistic worldviews. So I imagine that He feels that, or he feels strongly that the current administration in Baltimore fits in with that description, because they have done nothing but run that poor city completely and utterly into the ground over the course of the last 40, 50 years. I spoke to a guy the other day who lives in Baltimore, and he was telling me that they have 100,000 vacant homes in the city because of people leaving, because of crime, because of drugs. And he said it like the way that they depicted it in The Wire is absolutely the way that it is in reality. And, he seemed like a pretty level-headed dude. He's not some fucking far-right nut. But let me know if any of you are listening to this who live in Baltimore, whether that is correct. Because I'm interested in it generally. I'm a fucking huge fan of The Wire. That sort of thing just fascinates me. But so far, everything I've seen and heard of Baltimore and the murder statistics would suggest that whoever is in charge there is an incompetent fucking moron. It's very similar to what we have here in the UK and what most of Europe has. But enough of that. Let's listen to Misery Index. So here's the contrast between Misery Index and between Decapitated and Origin, who we've just listened to, and maybe even Demonical as well. The hook. I mean, it is so immediately catchy, and you can imagine yourself having listened to that and humming that riff for days on end. How are you going to hum that riff to Origin, or the Decapitated riff? And admittedly, that's not what everybody is looking for in their music. That's what I like in death metal, and specifically the level of aggression and intensity in Misery Index feels to me way higher than any of those bands that I mentioned before, and it feels more convincing as well. Now, again, that might just be me. Maybe it's kind of how I interpret aggression in music, but I like it. Again, tick in the box for me. First single was cool. Second single is good. I will definitely be looking forward to hearing this record, and if I can get anyone from Misery Index on the podcast, I will definitely jump all over that shit. Oranzi Pazuzu start working on new material. I am so fucking excited about this. I was a massive fan of Mestar and Kinsey, the record they put out in 2020. So for me, anytime Oranzi Pazuzu put out anything, I'm excited. But I'm especially excited after that record. I went back to that actually a couple of weeks ago, and I've listened to it again since a few times. It's fucking phenomenal. It is a timeless record, and it gets better and better every single time you listen to it. There's nothing really here that is especially noteworthy. All it says is psychedelic black metal crew from Finland, Oranzi Pazuzu, has begun with the work on their 6th full-length installment, the successor to 2020's Mestar and Kinsey. We can expect more information in the near future. Stay tuned. I sure as fuck will be doing that. Like I said, phenomenal band. Druids drop new song. Now, with a name like Druids, I can only imagine that the gentlemen who form the membership of that band have themselves a underground Magic the Gathering club and spend their weekends playing furious games of Dungeons and Dragons. But anyways, Iowa-based Druids are all set to unleash their 4th studio album, Shadow Work, on June the 3rd via Pelagic Records, coinciding with a new album announcement. Progressive stoner sludge trio also present a music video for the first streaming single called Path to R. Stoner sludge is hit or miss with me. I am a big fan of Electric Wizard, naturally, of course, a big fan of High on Fire, Sleep, Crowbar, that sort of thing. But there's also a load of absolute turd that swims its way into that genre. But because I am curious about this name, and because Assumption was a band that proved to me that you can't always judge a band by their name, let's give Path to R a quick spin. There's a bit of a Caius vibe to that, like a desert kind of vibe. And there's a couple of other bands that I'm thinking about as well. And actually, I can think of the song. The name is escaping me. Maybe a bit of Kailesa. I can maybe, like there's definitely some more sort of classic rock influences here than you're going to find in something like Electric Wizard. But I like that. I think that's pretty goddamn good. I apologize to the guys from Druids for making fun of their underground Magic the Gathering competitions. Let's get back to it.
Sacred prisons, 7 to 1. The idol is born.
It just occurred to me who this is, or who this reminds me of. Big Business. Big Business put out, by the way, one of the most incredible songs ever in any genre called Lonely Lyle. There's something about that dude's voice that reminds me an awful lot of Big Business, and there's something about the riff as well. And that's not a bad thing. I like Big Business. Like I said, I like that. I liked when it got a little slower there as well when the acoustic guitar came in. I'll have to do a bit of a deep dive into the Druids discography, I think. I think that's very cool. Okay, let's do one more, or maybe two more, and then we'll go over to the Democrats Guide to Rock Music. I can only imagine what's waiting or what awaits us on there. But I've had a dude who's reached out to me in the last couple of weeks, relatively frequently. He tweets me, and he's a great dude. His name is Quentin. I want to see if I can find his surname so I can give him a proper shout out. Quentin Farrow, I think is his name. Gangster of a man. Asked me whether I listened to Cave In, and I told him no. I think the last time I heard Cave In, they were on a cover disc, or like one of those cover mount discs on a copy of Kerrang, or Karap as it should be called. And I think for that very reason, I probably auto disliked the song. However, he has been insistent that it is very good, so I am going to now publicly give them another try. It says here, Cave In have premiered the second single from their forthcoming album, Heavy Pendulum, which is due out on May the 20th through Relapse Records. New track, Blinded by a Blaze, can be experienced via a video featuring album artwork by Richie Beckett, combined with live footage by Frank Wang. Guitarist vocalist Stephen Brodsky comments, I had the idea for Blinded by a Blaze during the final transmission days, but it really came to life for Heavy Pendulum. There were 5 or 6 songs in the initial batch of demos that I sent to the band at the beginning of the writing process, but Blinded was one that created a call to action. It's basically what sold JR, Adam and Nate on writing a new Cave In album. Lyrically, it's a sonic photograph of a strange magical moment that I had while driving along the Pacific Coast Highway during the golden hour, and the feeling of looking back on it years later, something everyone should try to experience at least once in their lifetime. I am going to try and experience this at least once in my lifetime, so this is Cave In, and the song we're listening to is Blinded by a Blaze. I don't know what it is, but there's something about the way that opening verse sounds that reminds me of Alice in Chains. And again, not a bad thing. Big fan of Alice in Chains. Also, I will say, a big fan of Stephen Brodsky's vocals. That he sounds so cool in that song. And I actually, so far, in the first 56 seconds of this, I think is fucking great. Let's hear where it goes to from here, though, because it's 7 minutes and 40 seconds. You're going to need to get at least a little bit of testosterone for old Jackson to remain to remain as positive about it as I am currently. I'm liking it. Quentin Farrow, you are wise. I think that's very, very cool. I'm going to have to listen to that song in its entirety. We don't have time for that now, of course, but maybe not something you'd expect a fucking, predominantly black metal podcast to be spewing, but who gives a fuck? It's my podcast. I'll say and do whatever I want. I love this song. I've thought about that. I think originally this podcast was very much intended to be a black metal podcast, and black metal probably makes up about maybe 60% of what I listen to in an average week. But I do listen to an awful lot of other music, and taking my cue from my brother Mike Hill, I do feel comfortable, and hopefully you guys enjoy it too, that I can talk about other shit, other music. Hopefully have other people from other genres on. I wouldn't mind having Stephen from Cave In on, off the strength of the first 1 minute 47 seconds of that song. But yeah, love it, fucking great. Quentin, great recommendation. Keep them coming. And by the way, thank you to everybody who keeps on dropping me notes with recommendations and stuff that they want me to check out. Generally speaking, I will always, if I have time, respond. And generally speaking, a lot of the stuff people have sent to me has been very, very cool so far. So I appreciate it. I appreciate the interaction generally. And I'll stress once again, I know I say this often, but it's like telling your girlfriend you love her. Sometimes or actually telling my dog I love her. There's certain things that you can't do enough. But I really, really appreciate the people that listen to this podcast. I so deeply appreciate the people that share stuff on social media. I see more and more people doing it every single week. And there seems to be a lot of folks who are growing, increasingly invested in helping grow the podcast. And I just want to let you know, I really do not take that for granted whatsoever. I'm 123 episodes deep into the show now. I've never thought that I would have the opportunity and the privilege of speaking to the people that I've spoken to, created the friendships that I've made. And I hope that I keep putting out something that you want to listen to every single week. Primus detail upcoming EP. Primus, in my opinion, are without a shadow of a doubt the most overrated band, not just in the greater alternative stroke metal sphere, but maybe in rock music generally. If you take rock music as a broad brush, genre for anything that has vaguely distorted guitars, then Primus almost certainly has to be a contender as being one of the most overrated buckets of fucking steaming lard that I've ever heard in my entire life. They have one cool song, and it's a track called DMV. I think it was on, I can't remember what album it was on, but I think it came out around 1994 because I heard it the first time when they performed it at Woodstock 94. That's a great tune. They have a great bassist in Les Claypool, technically speaking, but most of their music is a bunch of pretentious nonsense. And an 11-minute track like Conspiranoia, which is what's being spoken of here, to me sounds like the musical equivalent of Chinese water torture. I also have noticed, by the way, that I'm already passing the fucking 40-minute mark on my news rants and react segment. So let's cut short the serious talk and let's move over to Blabbermouth. Is there anything that is worth making fun of or talking some trash about on here? Grammy Awards producer apologizes for in memoriam snubs. I know Metal Sucks, the worst music website in the history of shitty music websites, made a big deal about this. I don't know why anyone cares, because the Grammy Awards have about as much legitimacy to me in metal music as fucking the Bible does. I mean, it really means absolutely nothing. It's funny to see some of the bands who win. It was funny to see, I think High on Fire won once. It was funny to see Mastodon win. Serious bands, good bands that win, and you kind of look at it and you go, well, someone somewhere managed to kind of squeeze one through the net. But for the most part, when they awarded a Grammy to Jethro Tull over Metallica, I think that was the last time anybody thought anything serious about the Grammy Awards. They mean nothing. But it says here, a producer of this year's Grammy Awards has apologized for the exclusion of a number of notable names from the televised portion of the ceremony's in memoriam segment after the 2022 Grammy Awards were broadcast on Sunday, April 3rd, live on CBS from the MGM Grand Arena in Las Vegas. Many hard rock and heavy metal fans took to Twitter to air out their frustrations with the event's organizers, who failed to recognize Slipknot drummer Joey Jordison, Cinderella guitarist Jeff LaBar, Megaforce co-founders John and Marsha Zazula, and the Moody Blues co-founder Graham Edge in the televised portion of In Memoriam. Again, like I said, who gives a flying fuck? They also left off a couple of years back Pete Steele, which in my opinion was one of the greatest losses to music in history. Fuck the Grammys. They would have naturally forgotten those things because they were too busy virtue signaling to remember. That's why. Much like the Oscars. All right. Ted Nugent defends Florida's Don't Say Gay law. It's about parental rights. It's not called the Don't Say Gay law, and funnily enough, if you actually read the bill, it actually never uses the word gay whatsoever. It essentially says that there shouldn't be a discussion about gender and sexuality with kindergarten through grade 3 kids. And I controversially agree 1000%. Not only do I not want teachers to talk about gender and about sexuality to my daughter, who's 8 years old, turning 8 years old, I don't want them talking about straight sex, gay sex, transgender. I don't even want them naming a penis and a vagina to her. That stuff is for me to discuss with her, not for them to discuss with her. I'm not going to have my child's head fucked up by somebody who I don't really know. I don't know for sure whether their values align to mine, and frankly, their job should be to teach kids how to read and how to do math. And if you look at the statistics in American schools right now, as far as that's concerned, kids that can read at grade level and do math at grade level, it's a fucking disgrace. And so the fact that they make this big of a deal about this bill, to me, just says more virtue signaling, more bullshit, more performative nonsense to try and get highlight clips for whenever they run for re-election. Because that's really, I'm increasingly seeing that. That's really the game when it comes to politics, especially in America. You know, and this is true whether you're on the left or the right. A couple of years ago, there was a clip that did the rounds of Lindsey Graham, a moron, walking past Kamala Harris, a moron and the worst vice president in the history of American politics, including the other worst president in the history of American politics, Dick Cheney, doing this high five and smiling at each other. And then minutes later, they were at each other's throats on a debating something or other. I don't know what it was. But that said everything. They're all in on it. It's like watching the WWE. It's everyone has a role. Some people are good guys. Some people are bad guys, depending on what side of the aisle you sit on. But I can tell you right now, very, very few of those people, I think, truly believe jack shit that they're saying. It is all just performative, theatrical bullshit. And like I said, as far as this don't say gay law, it's not the don't say gay law. It is the stop trying to teach my kids your fucking bullshit law. And I agree with that 1 billion %. Let's move on. Sepultura plays first show with Angra drummer Bruno Valverde. When I first saw this, I thought, oh my God, what happened to Eloy Casagrande, who's one of my favorite new drummers? Apparently he broke his leg, and so Bruno has stepped in. Hopefully Eloy gets better soon. The way that dude plays, I know he had like a stage accident and that's why he broke it, but that guy fucking slaps around a drum kit like it cussed his mama. So I hope he gets better soon, because at the intensity he plays, he's definitely going to need it. Disturbed David Draymond gets blasted on social media for solution to the student debt crisis. This is going to be fun. Disturbed frontman David Draymond has been criticized on social media for suggesting an oversimplified solution to the student loan crisis. Apparently, in response to yesterday's news that the federal moratorium on student loan repayments, which was set to end next month, has been extended through August 31st, Draymond shared a 2019 political cartoon from Rick McKee, the staff cartoonist at the Augusta Chronicle. In the cartoon, a professor can be seen standing next to a huge whiteboard and using a pointer to highlight to a student the two-step solution to the student debt crisis. 1, you took out a loan. 2, pay it back. Once again, I 110 million % to infinity agree with that. I was a student. I had a student loan. I paid it back. Many others did also. It is not my problem, nor should it be the problem of any. I'm not an American taxpayer, so when I say it's not my problem, let's just put it into context. If I were an American taxpayer, it's not my problem that you decided to go and study some fucking useless crap like gender studies, English literature, or whatever else nonsense the market has no need for, that you can't earn enough money to pay back your student loan and still live with your parents. I think that there should be a revised approach towards incentivizing what people study, and I can definitely get on board with the idea of America saying, right now they have a shortage of STEM qualified, youngsters coming out of university or graduating out of university. I could absolutely get on board with them saying we need to plug our skills gap by saying if you're going to study math, science, technology, computer science, whatever the case may be, you can study that for free provided you pass all of your subjects. But to pay for somebody to go and study some fucking useless nonsense that is, pointless to society, fuck that shit. I think that anybody who is in favor of that nonsense should go and assess the current debt situation in America, what its impact is on society currently, what its impact is going to be, because it continues to grow, because the Biden administration spends money fucking hand over fist like a bunch of drunken sailors, same as the Trump administration did. And then say to me, okay, where is the fucking money supposed to come from for this? And the do-gooders will go, well, stop all the pointless wars. And they'll do that at the same time as they have their Ukrainian flag Facebook fucking icon. And they're saying, create a no-fly zone, stop Putin. And that, folks, is where I'm going to end the news for this week. There are some episodes that I enjoy doing, and there's some that I just have a fucking blast. And I had a blast doing this. I don't know whether it's because I'm recording it on a Friday, and I know I've got 2 glorious days free of doing any work. But I hope you guys enjoyed that. I had a super fun time. Thank you for listening. If you've come all the way to the very end of the podcast, thank you to Sotiris for coming on the podcast. Make sure you check out Septic Flesh. Make sure you check out Ultha. Like I said, I'm going to have Ralph Schmidt on the podcast to talk about that record. And by the time that you listen to this, hopefully that episode will be recorded. And I've got a couple of other great guests in the pipeline as well. Sam Bean of Antichrist Imperium and Werewolves. Next week, Tuesday, I've got Alex Jones of Undeath on. And then remember, on Friday, I'm dropping that Kylie's Calling episode about a week early. Just because, like I said, I've built up a bit of a backlog, and I don't really like putting out these conversations or letting too much time go by before I put out these conversations, because then they feel a little stale to me. I'm going to close out the show with a band I've been raving about over the last couple of weeks. I thought I would remind all of you, especially those of you that listen to the very end of the podcast, just how fucking badass they are. The band in question is UTKENA. They released my favorite record of 2020. The album in question is Necrosphere. It was put out on Pest Productions. The song is called Leith. I am going to bid all of you guys farewell, and I will see you bad motherfuckers on Friday.